So, I noticed that I've probably been the most aggressive questioner throughout this series of events, and I can see lots of faces who are like, right, just open your mouth. So I won't be taking questions at the end. No, I will, I'll see. I just want to say, all of the critiques that I was giving through the thing was all done with love, because I think that it's important that we be inclusive. And it's necessary not to delude ourselves in an echo chamber and think that if we can all agree to a bunch of things with like-minded people, that means these things are correct and true and robust and will survive challenge outside of the echo chamber. We need to make sure that that's the case. And I hope it's all been understood in that way. So let's begin with letters. Not even joking. Whose letter's this, Lander? Right, so he's the first guilty person of agreeing with me on letters. Who's next? This was really nice. And I think I'm just going to... No. I'm not going to read from it, but I just want it as a prop, because as Mark pointed out, there is a... Where's Mark? Hello. Right, why are you over there for a second? Right, so there is a genuine value in the physical thing. Right, there is, and your talk on abstraction was fantastic, because this actually is meaningful to me. You see, right? It's easy, someone to fire off a message or an email or something like this, but this is something that takes down and actually takes time and effort. There's no backspace when you're handwriting a letter, and then afterwards I have the physical thing. I've got to be concerned about it. Now it's a piece of property that I own and has been given to me with meaningful intent, and I value that. I think that's important. I'm not going to read for it because it's just a very polite and nice letter, and I'll be in contact. And it happens to also synergize with the beginning of my speech. Now, I added this after I'd written this speech because my nan had died a few months ago. She was 91, died of cancer, so it's pretty understandable. But after her passing, we discovered that she kept loads and loads of personal mementos from my father and his 5 brothers when they were growing up. And one of the things that she had kept is the first letter he had written home when he joined the RAF at 16. And I couldn't get over it, because it was literally about a day or so after I'd watched AA's Vision for the Right. And I'm just going to read it to you, right? So the letter's dated on the 9th of October, 1974. So 5 years before I was born. And he was sent to Swinderby in Lincoln. So you can imagine what Lincoln looked like in 1974. Mark knows exactly what we're doing. You've lived there. All right. Dear Mum, Dad, and the boys, my father of 1 of 6 brothers, I have arrived safely. As soon as about 60 of us arrived, we all had haircuts, received bedding, and some bits of uniform such as denims, jumper, and a belt. Also a ground sheet and 2 padlocks. As soon as I arrived, I decided I was going to chuck it all in and come home, but as I write this, I realise I'm just a little bit homesick and will try and stick it out. I hope I improve. I miss you all and the people of Wiltshire. I hope you're all right. All right again pretty soon. Lots of love, David. So I was touched by this because I could hear what Academic Agent was talking about when he was talking about Trumpton. Like, I miss the people of Wiltshire. He's in Lincoln. How different could it have been? Especially in 1974. But the thing is, to him, it was significantly different because he didn't know these people. They were all new. It's a new environment, even though it would have looked just like where he had left. And so I thought I'd written this before I added that, just so you were aware. And I thought I would just go through AA's positive vision of the right and discuss it, because I think it was very interesting as a thought experiment, and especially the reaction to it was most amusing, and I think I can explain it. So the purpose is to build a self-sustaining local community with traditional values, what he had previously called milkman localism. And I really think he's on something with that. I think it's a good term, because it... within it, it kind of harmonizes the small, quaint, local nature of life, where everything is reliable and normal and habitual. You know what the next day is going to bring because it was just like the previous day. And this is what young people find cloistering. This is what they're trying to escape when they get to the city. There are new experiences. But it's important that these places exist because they need a place to come back to after they've gone and made all their mistakes, after they've got the scars on their soul, after doing whatever you have all done in a big city in your own time. Yeah, I can see you smirking. Exactly. You know what I mean. The assumptions he's building on is that community is good, local is better than national or global, sustainable is better than wasteful, and traditional is better than modern. Now, there are going to be ways of criticizing these assumptions, but for now, for the purposes of this, we can accept them all, they're fine. The goals are, of course, to prevent nomadism, prevent social and technological disruptions, and he gives his example in the British children's TV show, Trumpton. Now, just to be clear, the mimetic synergy of this is amazing, isn't it? How is it that it just happens to be called Trumpton? What are the odds, right? For anyone who doesn't know, this is, if it's a small local town, you all saw the video. Everything's small and local, but the important thing is that everyone has a place, and everyone is reasonably satisfied with their lot in life. The people belong there. It's a good vision, and one worth appreciating for its aesthetic merits. It's a vision of life of pleasant habit, lived out in relative comfort by people who have a proper place in the world. Where should they be other than where they already are? And then AA decides to theorize about this. To make a theoretical Trumpton, it requires him to freeze it in time and place. He must crystallize this thing that is a living organism, which naturally will kill it. He felt it must require a command economy, top-down planning, social engineering, retardation of technology, mass censorship, control of population movement, and a totalitarian local government. A form of miniaturized socialism that takes on the worst aspects of fascism. So why did your audience and everyone else who is of sound mind think that this was a bad idea? Well, I'm going to invoke Roger Scruton's views on the myths of civilizations. Now, it's important to remember that when we say myth, we don't mean actually fictional constructs. These aren't falsehoods, they're parables. They are reflections of potential realities that can and do exist. They're stories about how a civilization should be run. He divides it into the vanguardist versus Magna Carta myth perspective. Vanguardism is, of course, the control of society from the top down by a class of managerial elites, whereas Magna Cartaism is the view that legitimacy comes from the bottom up and people should be able to manage their own affairs. What the conservatives would be trying to conserve cannot be produced in the vanguard fashion. The people needed to maintain the spirit of the town won't be happy, free, and prosperous. They are a product of the Magna Carta myth. They won't love where they live. They will feel tyrannized by it, and they will come to despise it and seek to escape it. This will destroy the very essence of what Trumpton was meant to be about in the first place. It's meant to be a happy place that people can call home. Vanguardism is the herald of socialism, and no form of socialism can produce a Trumpton. A managerial class of any kind cannot create a Trumpton. This excludes communists, fascists, or national socialists. Anyone who has a big idea on how society should be run will fail, because Trumpton is the product of many little ideas on how very small parts of the world should be run. Small business owners and local communities, independent-minded people being in charge of their own destinies, working with their neighbors to achieve the same effect. AA's managerial Trumpton is the right-wing version of the communist utopia. So to steelman the communist position, I never thought I'd say that. AA's the communist drive is to provide man with all the necessary resources and provisions to live a full and bountiful life. But the problem with this vision is it misses the point. The end result is that he's free to do anything, but that's not what human freedom really means. What it really should mean, at least to us, is to be free to be a human being, to live within a telos that is bequeathed to us by our parents and grandparents, to have a flourishing life in a way that has meaningful connections to other human beings. And you have to be a certain kind of person to achieve that. That kind of person can't be created through managerial vanguardist politics. And we can just look at the contemporary examples, just the popular figures of the vanguardist left online. Self-hating, heroin-addicted woke lords like ContraPoints, who despise their own communities. Post-abortion, post-war, childless alcoholic women like Lindsay Ellis. Millionaire hypocrite man-children who preach socialism for me but not for thee, like Vorsh and Hassan Piker, or the brainless bottom-feeders who don't have the wit to understand the contempt with which everyone else holds them, like the serfs. And this is just their YouTube propaganda megaphones. Collectively, the woke left have so much money and cultural capital at their disposal. But are any of them living their best lives? They, of all of the people that I can think of, must have surely learned by now that money can't buy happiness. Instead, the woke left are a bunch of drug-addicted eunuchs, stricken with self-professed mental illnesses that they proudly display to the world, completely miserable with their lot, and yet still promoting the lifestyle that led them to becoming the 41%ers. Look at the absolute state of them. And then remember that they want that for you and your children. They are stuck in Plato's cave. They point at the shadows on Twitter and cry that woman is a featherless biped. However, theirs is a bad definition of everything, and their shadow world of theory turns out not to be the truth. Man is a rational animal, and is the animal part that has long been neglected by the left. We have to accept that humans have a biological, meaning habitual, nature. And it's this habitual nature that is being spoken to in Trumpton. This is why traditionalism always finds murky waters in theory, because habits are acts taken. They are not ideas reflected upon. One does not need theory for tradition, one needs only to repeatedly do something. So perhaps this is a better way of living that we can provide to a person that has meaning. As Trumpton can only be constructed by the certain kind of person, that certain kind of person who feels that they authentically belong somewhere. This kind of belonging found in the meaningful relationships to individuals and places, named things, not abstract categories. And so a positive vision of the right must include the drive to become the kind of people who make a Trumpton, and be in the kind of place a Trumpton exists. And it actually means becoming these local heroes that Mark was speaking of and embodied so well, who form the social fabric of their little local community, and who make the world work without requiring outside intervention. If you want this to actually exist, to reinforce the points that almost everyone was making, you have to do it. Trumpton is, of course, the product of the Magna Carta myth, and as I've said, it requires us to change. And it's important to remember that change is the one immutable constant of reality. It has to be accounted for in Trumpton. But it is not that change is bad. Change comes in two forms, destructive and constructive. Change that aligns with the animating principles of Trumpton is nothing to be feared, whereas the assault on Trumpton by the vanguardists would ruin it utterly. And I think that the positive vision of the right must be the appeal to become these pillars of the earth, to be those people whom can be relied upon in a crisis. As Poe was saying, this gives you a legitimate moral claim to a place and a way of life. And if the woke can't understand this, the regular person will. The best the managerial elite can do to achieve this is just ensure that outside forces don't excessively affect Trumpton, but not control Trumpton itself. And if we import foreign ideologies that seize absolute power in order to remake the world, then we'll have already failed. To do this, we must take our civilization seriously. We must understand who we are, what our essential nature is, what it is we do every day, because what AA is describing are merely the simple folk of the Shire, the yeomen of the countryside, the backbone upon which our entire civilization rests and always has, stretching back 1,000 years into myth and legend. And I really mean myth. Like, Britain has got a magical past. It's the envy of the world. Look at the way the foreigners look at us. They can't believe what we have here. And it's a narrative that interweaves heroic greatness with humble communities, that gives a place of honor from the highest king to the lowest peasant. And it will be quipped by some that the magic only works if you believe in it, though. Okay, because we can reverse that logic. If we believe in it, the magic works. These pioneering tribes from Germany and Ireland conquered Great Britain from the Romans and the Picts, and for 800 or so years they lived alongside and fought one another until their monarchies merged, and from this a great empire was born. And from the ashes of this empire, lost in glory, fighting an existential evil, we produced the modern world as we know it. If this was the story of any other indigenous culture, it would be easy to respect and cherish. And so by that standard, it is not wrong for us to love our oikos, our home and our history, our families and our friends, and the place in which we live. We all have a part in this story, and we do not need to justify our way of life to communists. We do not care which category they are offended by today. It is not wrong to preserve this magical way of life, and no reasonable person would dare suggest otherwise. In my view, the only way that we can really win is by defeating and overtaking the dominant narrative, the left-wing narrative, from within its own paradigm. As with any war, final victory is only achieved by defeating the enemy on their own terms. For the right, that means asserting the positive vision of our own civilization in a language that we do not yet have, that overtakes and flows through the paradigm of the left. As I said before, I'll doubtless say it again, this will be a generational endeavor, but we must see it through, despite the toil and hardship that will inevitably come our way. This is our civilization that is at stake, and we must not give it up. Thank you.